Let's talk a little Air Force football, a team that was really, really good a couple of years ago, took a massive step back last year.
Mhm.
JP, preview them for us in 2025.
Yeah, the team that probably gets forgotten the most in the Commander-in-Chief trophy, but I tell you what, it's a team within the Mountain West that's been towards the top of it for a long, long time. Troy Calhoun will go into his 19th year there in Colorado Springs. They were 5-7 last year. Their season win total currently sits right now at 5.5, juiced to the over at 164. Expectations at service academies are usually good enough to get to a bowl game. Mixture of athletes, program tradition, and just being tough to defend, if we're being completely honest about it, right? The attrition hit them hard, really hard last year in 24. I previewed them last year, got that privilege. And we talked about it, how big of a turnover throughout that roster was, not from the portal, just from straight graduation throughout the academy. They've won 9 games more times in the last 8 years than they've had a losing season. And I think that tells you everything you need to know about what this program is and who they are, right? When service academies are good, I think people circle a couple things. The fullbacks are usually really good, or they have a really good quarterback at the helm. I think the fullback situation is great for the Falcons. We'll get into that here in a second. But the quarterback situation is more of a question mark. There'll be a couple guys that probably get some snaps. Josh Johnson seems to be the leader in the clubhouse for getting the snaps for Falcons week 1 against Bucknell. Let's go into the fullbacks. Like I told you, when the service academies are good, one of these two positions is either popping off or they're both working really well in sync, right? Dylan Carson will be the guy this year. Very talented, right? He's going to be the leading rusher. He was a leading rusher a season ago. Owen Allen is similar build, but a little bit of a different running type on those two guys. They're going to be really good at that position. I think one of the deepest units on this football team and throughout everything. Tailback and wingback will be by committee. That's usually how these programs run. You stay in your pitch lanes, make plays downfield, and that it's going to come down to quarterback position making decision making is kind of why I talk about it. We come from small town Iowa or small town I guess you didn't come from small town Parks, but we know how it works. The option is massive in the Midwest. And so this is a high level option. You've seen good high school teams run the option. You think that looks silky and like magic. Watch these service academies do it. That's why the quarterback position is such a big deal, right? Pay attention to that. It's one of the most fun things to watch on a Saturday every single week. On the offensive line, they're pretty hype about this. I think there's some good things to think about. 3 offensive line starters return in this offense, right? It's got to be gelled. There's so much communication that goes into this on the offensive line. You have no idea. Guys have to be able to gel, trust each other, and understand what each other is saying and seeing. And it's an absolute must throughout this, right? There's true high hope for this group that it could be one of the better units. And maybe if it's not the best unit, right behind the defensive front, where that's going to be really good as well, right? This team ran for 1,000 less yards last year than they did in 23 when they were winning a ton of football games. I underlined that and circled it 5 times as 1,000 less yards. That should tell you everything you need to know about how tough it got for him last year. A couple players to know here. Caden Frew, tailback, there's a 5.8 yards a carry guy last year, just over 260. And then the center, Costin Cooley, going to be a guy who probably has a chance to be all Mountain West, if I'm being completely honest with you, on the offensive line. Defensively, right? The Mountain West, pass defense wasn't bad, wasn't great last year, but it did, numbers-wise, do better than most teams throughout the league. The defense did have, some trip-ups against the run in certain spots, and now it gets to a spot where the defensive line returns a couple of guys. That's going to be huge, right? I just talked about how it might be the best unit within this team. The defensive line has that real attitude and that ability. If you just look through who the roster is and who they bring back and the actual talent they have on these guys, it's insane. I'll just bring up a couple guys right now. Defensive end Daniel Grove, and then defensive tackle Peyton Zadoric. 2 guys who are going to be all Mountain West contenders. There's not even a real, contention there, if I'm being completely honest with you. 3 guys a return that had more than 4 starts a season ago on that unit. I talked about the linebacker core here. It's going to be headlined by Blake Fletcher. There's a number of guys here that have seen starts, minimal starts, but they're going to have to really work to make this unit better and really shore up the front 7 in this situation. And on the back end, you lose 2 really good corners, and it's always been tough for them to get in this spot. You got to have an absolute athlete in the Mountain West to play corner, and you got to play DB. This unit is going to have to really rely on a lot of those guys getting better and better as time goes on. Onto the schedule, I think if you look at where the schedule is on this thing, It's a tougher Mountain West schedule than we've seen in the last couple of years for for Air Force. Boise, at UNLV, at San Jose State, at Colorado State. It's not a cakewalk. It's not a cakewalk. I don't care if you're the top end of the Mountain West or the bottom end of the Mountain West. Non-con, Commander-in-Chief trophy, obviously, is you get Army-Navy. Bucknell would love that. And then you get UConn. I thought that one is like, what a crazy game.
Isn't it the
year?
Right?
It's at UConn.
In November, right?
In November. Yep. Second week of November. I thought that was a crazy addition. It's like one of those college football games. You're going to be like, damn, I forgot Air Force plays UConn this week. So defensively, I think they're going to be solid. I do worry about the back end a little bit. I do think the trenches on both sides would be really good. If they can find a way to get the quarterback in a good spot and he's not turning it over, they don't have any issues on that front. They can work with the offensive line and really just move the football and use the option game to their, back to their norm. We're not 1,000 yards less than we were a couple years ago. Then I think things are going to be okay and they'll get back to bowling.
When you think about the Armed Forces team, any commander-in-chief capable winning team, you want them to be big and powerful. So it's good to hear that they're going to be good up front just for America. So I think it's such a fun thing when Air Force is good. I mean, a couple of years ago when they were ripping off, I think at one point they were 8-0, and then they lost a couple games towards the end when they got competitive teams in there. It's just good for college football to have a good Armed Forces team on one way or another. Jake, thoughts quickly on the Falcons?
Yeah, you got to trust a guy like Troy Calhoun who's been around for 19 seasons. And really the last decade, Air Force has been the most stable service academy team. So it was kind of odd to see them struggle last year.
Yeah.
And especially since, I know the portal hits those service academies tough, but you see Army and Navy succeeding and having good seasons last year. It's got to bite at Air Force a little bit to get back to where they were and dominate the Commander-in-Chief trophy. And on top of that, you get your best pieces back, your most important pieces. You get your linemen and you get your fullbacks back. So you got to feel like you have a ton of confidence.
All right, we'll see what Air Force can do in 2025.